I am delighted to be here with GT Dave, the king of kombucha. Woo!
Thank you.
I'd love to dive right in with a question, which is, you created kombucha in my mind. It basically didn't exist as a category before you. You brought it to life. So tell us, we've heard a little bit about the story about your mom and how you started it, but can you kind of briefly tell us that story and how you started it?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I can't take the credit for single-handedly creating kombucha. Kombucha is, as you know, a fermented food. And
At least getting it into every grocery store in America.
Yes. But so fermented foods have been around for a while. But also the reason why I can't take credit for at least pursuing it is it was my parents who raised me a vegetarian that exposed me at an early age to unusual foods, wheatgrass, chia seeds, things of that nature. And they brought kombucha into the world, and I resonated with it because it was everything in my mind that food should be. And I loved its kind of handcrafted quality. When you make it, it's almost like a form of meditation, and I was immediately compelled to share it with the world. But I wanted to share it with the world with a condition, and the condition is that it would be exactly like it was when you make it in your home. Personal, intimate, unadulterated, untainted, and all of that. And I felt it was my gift to share, and luckily that went well.
And you were pretty young when you started this, right? You're 15, is that right?
Yes.
So what is it like to start a company at 15, especially one that has endured?
It's interesting, but to be honest, it never felt like starting a company. Because I know because I was so young, I didn't have the kind of, I didn't understand business yet, and I definitely wasn't an entrepreneur. I was just someone who was young and passionate, and again had a background of being raised with health food and the understanding that food can be your medicine as well as your poison. And again, it was just something that it, as kind of Lou said earlier, it was almost like a giving birth experience. There was the early years where it was kind of the barefoot and pregnant, where you're walking around and you're giving life to something, and all you really want is that life to be born and to live its own life and live a good life and make a positive impact on the world and others. And that's kind of how I started my company. And honestly, it really saved me from some really bad mistakes because I was going with my heart.
Well, that leads right into my next question, which is what role does passion play in your company?
Passion is everything. Passion and purpose is the driver. It's not the ego or the success or the monetary benefit, because if those are the drivers, you more likely than not will fail or you'll struggle. And it's really about making a difference. It's really about understanding what's important to you and how that resonates with others, and trying to rather nudge people in that direction or just speak a language that they understand. And so passion is everything.
You've been called a conscious entrepreneur. What does that mean?
I think what that means is that there's a lot of thought. There's definitely a high level of thoughtfulness that goes into every single thing that I try to do. Whether it's, again, the products that we make, the ingredients that we use, the packaging that we use, the tone, the voice. It's really, again, like a person. And it's everything.
How hard is that to maintain as a business grows? Both the passion, the purpose, the conscious entrepreneurship. How does that evolve? How do you keep that? How do you kind of keep connected to that as you're growing your business, as you're expanding?
It's incredibly difficult. And the reason why I say that is I believe that business and passion sometimes fight with each other. I think profit and purpose fight with each other. And with my company, we went through so many different iterations and chapters and journeys and paths that when you go from small to a version of big, you feel that there's a lot of pressure. You start to hear a lot of noise. And it's human nature to start to pay attention to it, but you honestly can't. It's not about running a business. It's not about being number one. It's not about growing sales. It's really about making a difference, and that can't ever change.
Do you still taste every batch?
I do. Absolutely.
I know that you're a pretty spiritual guy. How does that play into business? How does that play into your decisions?
spirituality is kind of one of my main core values. And well, first of all, so when I was a young child, I was exposed to kind of the Eastern philosophies of life. My parents took me to an ashram when I was very young. And by the way, I was baptized Catholic, so I had kind of religion as a foundation, but then I had spirituality, which are very different, similar but different. And what I learned at an early age is every action has a reaction, that karma really is a big deal. And that I realized, and I was kind of exposed to this consciousness at an early life, that when you're on your deathbed, the thoughts that go through your mind is not how rich you were, or how cool your clothes were, your cars, or your jewelry, or how popular you were. It really is, did I live my life to the fullest? Did I show my love to the people I love? Did I savor those small things? And so spirituality plays a role in the decisions I make as a entrepreneur, because I really want to make a decision that's going to have a positive result, not just something that's going to be profitable and successful and popular and kind of stroke my ego. It really is about the greater purpose.
How do you communicate this purpose and some of these values, your spiritual values, to your employees? Like, how does this become part of the DNA of the company that people kind of sign up for?
Well, it becomes a daily mantra, right? When you work with people, you first and foremost want to make sure that you're aligned, that you understand the world or see the world with similar eyes, that you are excited by the same things and potentially turned off to the same things, because without that alignment, you really are speaking different languages. So to immediately understand or establish that common denominator of a language is really important. And then to, again, make it a daily reminder of this is bigger than us. This is not about us. We are instrumental in a greater purpose. And so once you kind of establish that foundation, everything else just follows.
I'd love to talk about, well, before that, what does your hiring process look like then? How do you, if you're trying to look for people that are aligned with you, how do you do that? How do you interview?
It's tough. I mean, the best analogy that I can give is it's a lot like dating, but it's dating with the understanding that you are going to get married right after this. So you want to.
That's intense.
It is intense.
That's an intense first date.
So imagine a date, and again, not to get too far down this path, but when you're understanding somebody, whether it's a friend or a potential future spouse, you can talk about the superficial things, but then ultimately, what really makes things stick is what are your religious or spiritual beliefs? Do you want kids? What's your family like? That stuff, because that really is the DNA of that person. Mm-hmm. So it kind of an employer-employee conversation it's kind of like that is what's important to you in life? What do you do for fun? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And some of those things are somewhat cliche, but it's really kind of digging into that and then getting
how they answer.
Yes, the details of their response is really important.
A few years back, you went through one of what's probably every entrepreneur's worst nightmare when kombucha was seen to have trace amounts of alcohol and was pulled from all the shelves. How did you come back from that? How did you come back from a setback that must have been crippling in many ways?
It was incredibly crippling. And first of all, I'm grateful for that experience, as weird as that sounds. Because what that did for me is it was a very strong reminder of easy come, easy go. And a lot of what has been discussed earlier today is complacency. It's very easy to get complacent. But when you see something kind of pulled from you understand that it's almost impossible now to be complacent. And it made me even more humble and even hungrier because, again, I think it's a human nature to, as you're becoming successful and you're just dealing with growth, that you don't sometimes see the potential for bad. And so I saw it up close and personal, and it changed me forever. What it also did, though, is through that experience, is it was the fans, the consumers, the people that consumed our kombucha products, that they spoke up that they wanted it back. And that
they were also devastated.
They were also devastated, exactly. And that was very inspirational for us because it reminded us that we're not just making a product, we're making something that people connect with, that it's part of their life. And that was incredible.
So you come back from that now. What are the obstacles that you're facing now? What's challenging you right now in your business?
There's a lot of things that challenge us, but honestly, I would say is remaining true to our roots. Is that as any company grows and as the years pass and everything, you have to routinely look down and go, am I on the same path that I started on? Am I saying the same things that I said when I started? Because it's very easy to get caught up and to somehow realize that you're now saying different things or acting different ways. So the greatest challenge is to think big, but kind of act small, is to always be passionate and entrepreneurial and take those risks and don't be scared to fail.
Yeah. What are you going to do when you can't taste every batch anymore?
I'm going to have to hire somebody that has a really good palate.
Do they train people for that?
We do, absolutely, absolutely.
Cool. So you have been a real pioneer of wellness, and you've been in the space for a long time. I'm curious to know what you think about wellness, where you think it's headed, what you see as the next trends, like what you've noticed seems to be coming up.
Absolutely. Well, I think, wellness is such a general term, and it really is that. It's everything. It's not just what you eat. It's where you live. It's where you exercise. It's the energies that you surround yourself with. And I think as a society, we're going to start paying more attention to that. Right now there's a big focus on food, but the next layer is, so what's the story behind the food? And that is an indication that we're really starting to tap into the power of energy. The people that we surround ourselves with, or the people who make the products that we consume or are involved in. That's really huge, is understanding that there's more than just the obvious things.
I know you do a lot of wellness practices yourself. Which ones do you think are the most important to keep you strong in your business? Which ones do you think that every entrepreneur should be doing?
I think the most important thing is meditation. And the reason for that is meditating is the best way to clear your mind, take a step back, to reflect on the day that you are about to have or the day that you just had. And you take an inventory of the good, the bad, the not so good, and you embrace it, and you go, tomorrow will be another day. And it's an opportunity to grow and improve.
Yeah. What does your practice look like? Morning and night? Just morning, just night?
Exactly. Morning and night. It's an absolute routine.
Great. You have alluded in the past to the fact that maybe there's more in store and that you might go beyond kombucha at some point. Can
Absolutely.
you speak to that?
Absolutely. So kombucha to me has always been like a conduit, right? So it's a conduit for wellness. It's a conduit for a certain consciousness. It's a conduit for a certain lifestyle. And I was exposed to kombucha at an early age, so it became the initial conduit that I tapped into. But I honestly believe that, to me, kombucha represents so many things. It's a fermented food. It's handcrafted. It's not mass-produced. And there are so many similar yet different things that are like that. And kombucha started my love affair for fermented foods. And so I honestly really want to see the next chapter of my company's offerings kind of furthering that consciousness and philosophy of fermented foods and bringing them into people's lives. Maybe foods that have been big in other cultures or other parts of the world, but bringing them here to the States and offering them in a high quality yet accessible format is important to me.
Yeah. Okay, so kombucha isn't the only way to get that necessary fermentation.
Not at all. In fact, not to let the cat out of the bag, but our next product offering...
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. The next offering that we want to do is fermented coconut water. So it's coconut kefir. So you take the young, raw coconut water, and you take active probiotics, and you ferment it, and it's incredible.
Oh, that should be in our cups right now. Well, fantastic. Okay, I'd love to take any questions that anybody has. Yes.
So, as a very purpose-driven leader, I've really enjoyed hearing from you, by the way. Do you have a counterpart at work who kind of holds where you aren't as strong? And can you
So Sadie's asking, do you have a counterpart at work who holds places where you aren't as strong? Is there somebody else?
Absolutely. So first of all, what's really important is to always surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. So I try to have people that know more than I do in certain fields. I currently don't have one person. I have a variety of people that specialize in certain areas that I'm not as good as they are. But it really becomes a family. Outside of work, I mean, my mother is a big mentor. I think it's important to have outsiders that aren't really affected by what you do. That's why mentorship becomes fantastic, because they give you their unbiased opinion and they'll tell you what's good, and more importantly, they'll tell you what's bad, and it leaves a lot of room for growth.
So first of all, I just wanted to volunteer for when it's time to get the kombucha taster person to hire that person. We'll just put my application in early.
All right, I'll meet you outside.
Charlie will be the first kombucha tester.
I was just curious because I know that you started this company very young, and I think is it still privately owned by you and your mom?
Yes?
Yeah. So
So sorry, we're asking if the company is still privately owned.
right, but the follow-up question to that is do you see this? I mean, a lot of people build a company with the idea that they're going to sell it someday.
So are you going to build a company that you're going to have for the rest of your life, and does that change the way that you develop the company?
That's a great question, and that's honestly something I think that every entrepreneur faces, and the answer can many times change. And what causes the answer to change is where you are in your life, how the company is growing or not growing, if you feel like you've maxed out, or if you feel that you've done your part and it's ready to pass the torch to someone else, and now you can explore other opportunities. For myself, I do treat my company kind of like an overprotective parent, and the products we make are very much like my children. And so in my mind, it's very hard to let them go and no longer be their parent, but in a way, almost see them as, using the same analogy, as having your child grow up and then marry somebody else. And so you want them to marry somebody else that hopefully will have the same values that you do.
And then your family grows.
And then your family grows, and you're better together.
I like this analogy. Okay. Yeah.
What is
Okay, so we've been hearing a lot about sugar and about how we should be avoiding it. There's some residual sugar left in kombucha. Is it still beneficial?
Absolutely. So first of all, sugar, as you're referring to it, has a couple of definitions. So there's sugar like tablespoon of sugar, and then there's sugar like sugars, like that you find in fruit and vegetables and things of that nature. So the recipe for kombucha and most fermented foods requires some kind of carbohydrate. So even in the coconut kefir that I earlier spoke of, is that the natural sugar in the coconut is the catalyst for the fermentation. With kombucha, you start off with an organic tea, and you do need a form of carbohydrates. So that can be organic sugar, it can be honey, it can be agave, it can be fruit juice. There's pros and cons with different ones, but at the end of the day, and this is something that we have to remind people of, is that the sugars, whatever form of sugar that is for the probiotics and not us. So after it's done with the fermentation, there is a residual amount, but even what's left is not true sugar, because the first thing that happens in the fermentation, this is true with almost all fermentation, is the breakdown of those sugars. So if you're using, for instance, organic sugar, within the first stages of the fermentation, the glucose, fructose, and sucrose is broken down. And most of the glucose and sucrose is consumed, and what's left is fructose, which is usually what you find in fruit. Now, at the end of the day, I think sugar has been demonized in any shape or form, right? Whether it's true sugar like table sugar, or whether it's sugar in fruits and vegetables. But honestly, I'm a firm believer that everything should be done in moderation. There's no one silver bullet or perfect thing to consume. However, to answer your question specifically, there's no health risk of the residual sugars found in kombucha. But again, like with everything, whether sugars are in coconut water or sugars are in kombucha, you want to consume it in moderation.
I'm supposing you drink it daily, maybe. Are you doing that for gut health purposes? I mean, why do you drink kombucha daily?
So why do you drink kombucha daily? What are the benefits?
Well, I drink kombucha for a lot of reasons. But why do people drink kombucha, I think, is probably the better way to phrase the question. And it really is that it's the probiotics that help replenish the gut and the intestinal flora. But honestly, more important than that is it has a natural kind of balancing of the acid alkaline through the organic acids, which are also naturally created during the fermentation, is they kind of balance you. So a lot of people notice that when they drink kombucha, it's a version of an adaptogenic, that it goes to different parts of the body where it's needed. So if you're tired, you have energy. If you have too much energy and you can't sleep, you're now sleeping better. If you're craving sugary, salty foods, it ends those cravings. So it's a variety of things, and a lot of times that will manifest in different physical benefits like improved skin, improved hair, kind of leaner, tighter kind of body mass. And so that's the general reason why people drink it.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Back here.
I think I'm married to your best customer. And I too am a believer in moderation. And so my question is, what's too much?
Is there ever any too much? Is there ever too much kombucha?
Absolutely. I mean, well, okay, so here's, a personal experience. So I taste test every batch, and I can go through about a gallon to a gallon and a half of kombucha a day.
Wow.
So to put that in bottle form, I mean, that's 8 to 12 bottles. Now, I do not
You
recommend...
seem to be doing pretty well, though.
Yeah, and I'm 80. Oh, yeah? Well, so you got some competition. So, I mean, again, moderation is so essential with anything and everything. So if I was to recommend a specific amount, I would say a bottle a day is good. And the most important thing is that you listen to your body. A lot of times people will notice that they're craving more because it's a nice substitute for other things, right? Kombucha is a great replacement for coffee, for alcohol, for soda pop. But for those that don't crave that stuff, and it's just kind of a staple in their diet, a bottle a day is perfect. And you can drink half a bottle in the morning and half a bottle in the early afternoon. There's really no wrong way, but moderation is key.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, back here.
What are some other natural products, brands you admire, and why?
Great question.
So what are some other natural products and brands that you admire, and why?
Well, there's a lot of brands right now that I admire. And the reason for that is right now we are luckily entering a stage of wellness and consumer packaged goods where companies, for whatever reason, some of it has to do with just the success factor of the organic and wellness industry, but there's a lot of innovation that's coming into the market. I really admire Doug Evans for doing the Juicero. I love brands that take something that is successful, but they say, I can make it better. And so that's a case in point of something that I admire. There are other products. I mean, I love what, for instance, and there's a variety of these companies, the press juiceries, the ones that are not necessarily going the route of HPP, but they're bringing fresh juice on demand, essentially, in a retail format. That's wonderful. And I admire people that, in addition to that are doing things that are different. And a lot of that right now is fermented foods and other things of that nature, because fermented foods, especially here in our society, we have a difficult time accepting them because they almost taste like they've gone bad. And I admire people that refuse to accept that, and they just can constantly push.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. Oh. So a whole week of fermented foods and you've never felt better. Ringing endorsement. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.